Good evening, everyone. Welcome in this webinar. We will wait for some more people to join us, but very happy to have you here. I hope you have a comfortable seat to sit on. Maybe you're drinking a cup of coffee, maybe a beer or a glass of wine or whatever. I would say sit back and relax so you can enjoy this webinar with us. We have Serge joining us from Serge. Where are you located exactly, if we are allowed to know that?
I'm located in Mechelen in
In
Flanders.
Mechelen.
That's between
Okay.
Brussels and Antwerp.
I was there a few weeks ago, since very long time. It was beautiful. Oh, wow. What a beautiful city it is.
Yeah,
And I hear an increasing number of people from the Netherlands going on a city trip to Mechelen.
all welcome. Not
Okay.
this evening, not this evening, but yeah.
And what about you, Zunera?
Well,
Where are you?
I'm based in the Netherlands at Radboud University, but I am actually sitting in Germany right now,
In
which
Germany.
sounds very far away, but we're right next to the border. So
Okay. Okay. So good to have you all here. It is 7:01 or 1 past 7. So we're gonna kickstart this webinar where we're gonna do some soul searching on rethinking international development. Is it about improving? Is it about reimagining? For those people that are new to webinar, just some technical things. You're able to see us. We will be your kind of host and speakers of tonight. We will get to an introduction later, but you can't see all the other participants, but you can communicate with each other. There's a chat, so you can write down your name in the chat. You can even share with us where you're located. We're very curious to get to know you a little bit. So if you're into that, you can open your chat, make sure that it says to everyone, if you can see that. And then you can just share your name and share where you are currently sitting or the mood you're in or whatever. It's also the place where you can put down or write down your questions. If you can see below, there's also a Q&A. So you can also use the Q&A to formulate your questions, but you can choose between the Q&A and the chat. If you feel more comfortable doing that in Dutch instead of English, no worries. You can write down your questions or your comments in Dutch. You can also go for French or Spanish or whatever. We are multilingual, I think. But please feel comfortable to share your thoughts using the chat or the Q&A. So in that sense, we try to make it interactive. We will also ask you some things through statements. So in that sense, there's opportunities for you to interact, but different. It's not possible for you to switch on your microphone and to join us in the conversation. So just for those that are new to the webinar, good to know. So yeah, what are we going to do? A lot is going on in the world of today, and I think it's a lot is going on. It's I don't know, it's a very bad summary of what is going on in the world today. But there's also a lot going on in the world of development cooperation, and all of us are somehow involved in that world of international cooperation, development cooperation. Many of you are running your own vierde pijler, your own VZ2, or in the Netherlands, your own particulier initiatief, your own stichting. Some of you are maybe involved in different ways, but all of you are trying to contribute to, let's summarize it as a better world. So all of you are dealing somehow with the developments that are taking place. And what we would like to do tonight is to give you some thoughts, share some experiences, share some facts, some figures, as an invitation for you to reflect on how you want to relate to all these developments that are going on in the world. And for that, I'm here to facilitate the conversation. My name is Sara. For those that don't know me, I'm a professor in Radboud University. And for 20 years this year, I'm doing research on fourth pillar organizations or private development initiatives. So I'm very happy to be here. This is one of my favorite evenings of the year. I've been joining these webinars now. I think this is the third year, and I always find it very cozy to somehow hang out with you during the evening. And my mom always told me, or my grandma always told me, that when you start talking about yourself first, you put the shit in front, like stront voorop. So I'm so sorry that I started by introducing myself, but I do this deliberately because I think it's more interesting to learn about Serge and Zunera. So Serge, without sharing your entire CV with us, what are the 3 things people here tonight should know about you?
Thank you, Sara, for your nice introduction. So yeah, I'm working for Triple 11, and what I like a lot is meeting people, enjoying to work on partnerships, and that's what I do also within Triple 11. I'm responsible for partnership policy. So that's amongst others also working with the 4 pillar organizations. But I've been working for 17 years in the international department with international partners. So that's one thing I really enjoy, and on which I would like to share a lot of ideas this evening. Another thing, I'm fascinated on the relation between mankind, humans, and nature. So I like to follow a bit that debate on the rights of nature, on all new alternatives, and that's something we're investing in also in Triple 11. So that's for me that's fascinating. So professionally, I'm a director HR and organizational development, linking also with decolonization, etc., to trying to help to transform Triple 11 to be ready for the future. And personally, I like karaoke singing.
Really?
Yeah, no, I won't sing this evening, but maybe for my next session with with the 4 pillar and private initiative, Sarah, yeah, maybe a karaoke session would be nice also.
Oh, that's so good to know. I always like to know the fun facts. So I'm writing down. Serge is very good at karaoke singing. Maybe if the evening takes very long, we will get Serge in the mood for some karaoke singing
I
here
like
in
that.
this webinar.
I'm not very good at karaoke singing, but I like karaoke singing. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Serge. So you have ample of experience, currently based in Belgium, and great that you will share with us all the experience you build up in 11, but also from before that time. So thanks a lot for being here. And from the world of civil society, we move to the world of academia, and I'm very, very happy to introduce you to my colleague at Radboud University, Zunera Rana. Zunera, what are the 3 things people here tonight should know about you? And are you
Yeah.
also joining Serge in singing karaoke, either good or bad?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sergi, as well. No, I had singing is not my thing. So, Sergi, I will clap and support you in the background, but probably not sing. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I've been working at Radboud University now for almost 5 years. Uh, after my PhD, and before that, I was a PhD student at Radboud University as well. So I was trying to think now, when both of you mentioned such big figures of 20 years and 18 years, how long has it been for me? So not that long. I've been a researcher for almost 10 years now in the field of international development, and I've tried to work on the theme of international development, specifically aid effectiveness and development cooperation for the past roughly 10 years. It's actually 8, so 10 sounds big. So but you get the idea. And I am also the vice program director for the program called Global Challenges, which was advanced master in international development, which was called advanced master in international development before, or AMID, where we are training people to become change agents and to question the current development cooperation and its structures. So I find that quite fascinating and interesting. Fun thing about me, and I was thinking it took me so long to come up with a fun thing that I realized maybe I'm not the most fun person. But I have 2 dogs, and I really like to go on long walks with the dogs, so like 10 kilometers or something. And we like to explore new places, and we like to also explore places where there are less people. So that's really fun, and we try to do that quite regularly. So yeah, it's
Thanks a lot,
something.
Zunera. Maybe I can add, I just realized, oh yeah, I know one fun thing about Zunera. I think I can share it. Zunera loves building with Lego. Yeah,
Yes.
that's true, Zunera. So she makes fantastic things, and I must admit, I also love playing with Lego. So during Christmas time, when then Zunera is making these fantastic things, and an alternative way to spend your Christmas holiday. So, okay,
That's true.
thanks, Serge and Zunera, for being here. So we have academia and experience from teaching and in the world of development cooperation, and then we have the experience from policy, from practice. So both of you first-hand experience and learn what is going on in the world of development cooperation, on the world of solidarity, the world of international cooperation, different ways to refer to it. And just kind of as a brief introduction, for those that are wondering what are they talking about when they talk about the developments in the world of development cooperation, I would say we are experiencing challenges that are more pressing than ever. Think of climate change, think of migration, think of insecurities, instability, growing inequalities in the world. And at the same time that we are dealing with these major, complex, interconnected challenges, we are dealing with the largest budget cuts since history in development cooperation. So for 2025, the estimates are, and that was last year, but sometimes these calculations take a bit of time, but that we were dealing with budget cuts up to $70 million. So budget cuts globally, a decrease of 70 was I saying billion? Zunera, I now, yeah, $70 billion that we have less to spend on development cooperation. We also see that in many countries, the agenda for development cooperation is centered around self-interest. So it's about development cooperation should serve our own interest first, so our trade, our economy, our security. And then at the same time, where all of this is happening, we see, especially in countries in the global south or the global majority, that there is a very strong call to shift power, to decolonize development cooperation, to really reimagine development cooperation. So, of course, we can say a lot more about what is going on in the world, but just these four elements, these four developments, if you bring them together, it becomes very clear that a lot of changes are taking place, and that the question for all of us working in this sphere of development cooperation, the question is, how do we want to relate, or how do we want to respond to these challenges? What I learned, as if these developments are maybe a bit, as we would say in Dutch, ver van hun bed, so far from their own reality. So some people don't feel really addressed by these developments. And what we hope to do through this dialogue that we will have together tonight is to maybe invite you to look at these developments from your own role and see on how you would like to respond to these challenges. So that's as part of the kickoff. So how are we going to do this? I will first give the floor to Zunera, followed by Serge, who will share briefly their thoughts on what, according to them, are the key developments taking place, what are their concerns, and what are their hopes. Then there's an opportunity for you to ask briefly some questions. And after a very short break, we will continue the dialogue between Serge and Zunera. And I will join myself also a little bit and through some statements. And that's also where we will invite you to share your thoughts through the statements and through the chats. I hope this is all clear for you. And I hope, of course, you like this setup. For the people that arrived a little bit later, warm welcome. We're very happy to have you here. There's a chat, there's a Q&A. Please make use of them. I will keep an eye on them. And I'm repeating, if you feel more comfortable to write in Dutch, please feel free to do so. And it is great. I had a look at the chat, and it is so great to see there's so many people from many different locations. I see people joining us from South Africa. I'm seeing people joining from Mechelen, maybe neighbors from Serge that are joining us. I don't know, from Antwerp, from Nijmegen. So it's really great to have you all here. We really appreciate your presence. Okay, let's rumble. Zunera, the floor is yours. What would you like to share with our audience when it comes to key developments, your concerns, your hopes?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for giving a very nice overview of the current situation that is there with regards to international development or development cooperation, however you call it. Before I talk about the concerns with regards to the current development, I would like to zoom out a little bit and see where it all started from. So if we just go not too deep into the history of development cooperation, and if we look back, what was the original purpose when it started, when it all came together? The development cooperation was mainly aimed at reconstruction after World War II. And then you might notice, as you move decades, you might notice that the purpose of development cooperation kind of changed with every decade. It started from reconstruction from World War II. It moved on to trying to bring economies on the same level as, high income groups. To in the 80s, it moved on, or 90s, it moved on to poverty reduction. Then it moved to the Millennium Development Goals agenda, which was, linked to poverty reduction. And now many of you here in the starting from 2015, the agenda changed to the Sustainable Development Goals and focused on not just poverty, but on land, on environment, on sustainability, on equal working rights, and so on and so forth. So development cooperation in that sense has been evolving quite a lot as are our societies. And so, what we see right now is also another evolution of this development cooperation that has been happening. And in that evolution, obviously, this time the guiding factor is not the motivation of the people to change, but rather the financing side of it, changing that kind of motivating people to change their attitudes or behaviors. Now, what we see is that specifically, Sarah and I, we did some research on it, and we found that within the current framework, with all the changes that have been taking place, we see kind of two trends that are emerging. There is one trend that is of we kind of classify that as improvers. These are people who see that the system works to a certain extent, but in the working of the system now there is less money because of all the budget cuts. And they say the way to solve the current issues, the current trends or problems that are there in development cooperation is to put more money in, to look for new investors, new approaches. As long as we can fill the funding gap, development cooperation can survive and can fulfill its current purpose of helping people, or making lives better one way or the other. Then there is the second group, which is that of reimaginers. And what does this group basically say is that that development cooperation altogether is broken in its current system. It and now the lack of funding should be taken as an opportunity to kind of sink the ship and build a new vessel out of it, with the intention that this new vessel would be based on more equality. It would be based on principles of localization, of decolonization, and so on and so forth. And usually, to be honest, when we've asked people, many of them they uh, kind of relate better. I don't know internally, I don't know, but at least what they say, they relate better to being the reimaginers. They want to restart the system and build a new vessel which is better than the previous sinking ship that we are currently on. And it's very interesting to see. But what most people also don't realize, that in building that ship or this new vessel, there's a lot of discomfort that comes in. That basically means how we are operating at this point, has to change completely. The power has to go in a different direction. The ways of thinking, the ways of operating has to go in a very different direction than what it is right now. And this is something that um, is nice to say, but it is very, very hard to implement. It basically means letting go of quite a lot of things, specifically here in the global north. So I think that personally, I think that both can happen. You can look for funding, but at the same time, start changing this system as well. Um, Because the problem is, if we start building the new vessel, there are people who are going to sink as well. If I follow my own metaphor, there are people who need medicines, who need things right now as well, and they will suffer as well. So I see the value of points that are made by improvers, and I also see some value of the points that are made by reimaginers as well. But eventually, what I would like to pass on as the main discussion point for today is that whether we choose one side or the other, what is it that we are trying to achieve? If we want to keep the current system, even then, or if we want to rebuild this system, what is our goal? Is it simply to help people, or is it to make something sustainable that can make people help themselves? And that is something that's where I leave it at the moment for the discussion. I think, Sarah, I hope I was in my time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Zunera. We will come back to this, but thanks for sharing your thoughts. And for those that have an interest in it, the report Zunera was talking about has been shared in the chat, so you can download it there. And for those that are interested to learn more about the reimagining and the improving, you can read all of it in that document. But we will also come back to that in this conversation. Okay, so let's move from Zunera, her thoughts, where she also talked about, I think very important, you called the discomfort. You were talking about what is the purpose of it all and what kind of system does that require. Let's move from there to Serge. And Serge, please take us along in your thoughts on what is currently going on in the world.
Thanks a lot. And Zunera, very interesting your introduction, because what you're saying, we're really experiencing it, real life, this kind of reimagining discussion, improving discussion. There's a lot of organizations with Triple is connected with that are a bit, that have that one way or another way stand in that debate as a reimaginer or as in a very different way. But for us, very important, most of our international partners are addressing us from a reimagining position, because they have seen a 11 and its network of other NGOs, four-pillar organization. They have often criticized it of being too much into the system, too much into acting as a development actor, as an institution in a sector, and not really being involved and engaged on topics which are the crucial topics for the future: climate change, redistribution of wealth. This world is changing quickly. Democracy, it's justice topics. They said you have to really invest much more again in how you address politicians, private sector, from that global system approach. And certainly not, of course, there's already a change happening, or we're in the development sector is also in a change, but they've seen it also a bit like if they pushed us to go to a change process, which certainly changed the narrative totally for 11. And a lot of other partners we're working with also. Like certainly the narrative of charity is not used anymore within our organization. Also terminology like the North-South development is something which is not used anymore within the movement. So it's really about a power shift, as you mentioned it, and a power shift which has consequences on many domains. It's about the funding. The funding, having access to funding, who's deciding on how to use the budget, who is deciding on what calls to work on. All these things we're really rethinking, reorganizing, and giving more power to our international partner organizations. Of course, that's linked with the debate we have within the movement and with international partners on decolonization, because a lot of partners, international partners, they consider the development sector as still very colonial, because it was linked with a past of a colonial responsibility of a state that disappeared, and then NGOs took over services in the colonies on health, etc. And many international partners still see that a bit as a continuation, and they say, yeah, you really have to quit from that past and to reimagine in a way your future. So all these things are happening for the moment, a bit sometimes a bit slow, sometimes fast, but just as this world is changing very quickly, I predict that also development cooperation will have to change much quicker also to continue playing a role in the future. And it's also about leaving behind a bit to a very technical approach in that sense, a technical approach of assistance, of helping, a much more political and movement-making role, creating coalitions, understanding the political context, understanding what justice is about, who has power in that real world, and that's much more than just thinking what technically works and how we can apply that in a certain context. And coalition making in politics also means like trying to find a common ground with a lot of groups, which are very difficult exercises which is going on. It's much easier to find each other in a technical context who has some expertise, who can add to that, rather than agreeing on a context, on a strategy to have impact on crucial actors as governments and private sector. So it's also being more activist in the future. New dynamics on activism, linking with movements, youth movements, which are which are, we feel like, not linking up automatically with international solidarity or international cooperation, and certainly not with development cooperation. I don't see any young people in protests in Belgium when it's climate march, etc., with boards written on "Please save development cooperation." That's not all this north-south. All this terminology is not a terminology, a framing that is used anymore with the new generation. So we really have to link up also with a lot of groups in society which are now a bit disconnected, which also means like there's a digital revolution going on. We really have to innovate that way, and it has a lot of opportunities actually to change. But this change will have to be a kind of a culture, an evidence. It will have to be something which we embrace to be able to play a role in the future. So but there are a lot of concerns indeed, then risks you have to take into
Serge,
account.
before you continue with the concerns, can I bring in a question from Ans, who she wrote in the question in the chat? Thanks a lot, Ans, for doing that. So Ans is asking if you can maybe give an example of this changing approach from, let's say, roughly from charity to the more system changing approach where that is based on justice, etc. Can you give maybe an example from 11/11/11 from the past and how you're going about things now?
There are good examples. Yeah, sorry, Sam.
No, and maybe also add to that, because Ans was also saying like, Ans, I'm translating freely. I hope that's okay for you. So how realistic is it that countries in the global south fund for their own challenges? Her experiences are that local giving is also maybe not that obvious. So could you maybe take that along in your question, your answer?
So first of all, there are good examples of how we can change also higher level society things. Like there's been a coalition with a lot of international movements in continents on de-investing in oil. For example, they had an action to the Norwegian fund, which is still invested a lot in oil or in fossil fuels, etc. So by pushing them and bringing the issue to the Norwegian and the European public, by pushing also in the context where you work with actors, with your international partners in the Middle East, in Indonesia, etc. Finally, that Norwegian fund decided to start de-investing in these products. But you can only realize these kind of things when you work together on many levels, the local level, the national level, in coalitions, and to push for a change at that higher level. So that's really very important. Also, climate change, we had some victories on when we had COP meetings. We were able to push for governments to start installing a kind of insurance system for countries which are hit by the climate change. But these things can only be realized when in Europe, with the climate coalition, with other climate coalitions in other regions, we push for a change. So it can happen. And we really have to believe that it's possible to create pressure from below. Now, on the funding, the question, Sarah, is whether funding is
is it possible for countries in the global majority or global south to maybe step up increasingly themselves? How realistic is that when it comes to funding?
Actually, we are trying to experiment a bit on that also, in which we construct a kind of coalition together with international partners, in which we equal power, in which we have equal partnership, and try to create a kind of fund together in which other donors, also local donors, can invest. So there are partners, there are international partners who are very much willing also to try to innovate on that. It's not easy, because our donors or the local capacity is not always available. But these kind of initiatives will eventually, I think, create a different relationship between us and international partners, and will also create different dynamic, because if the decision making is not only up to us, or mainly up to us, it creates totally different ways of looking to a context, because local organizations are much more better to decide on what capacity is available, what are local needs. And Fourth Pillar has a lot of experience also in that. Sometimes is much more closer in a direct relationship with local projects. So there's a lot of opportunities also there, I think, to try to get to experiment on new ways of funding in which partners are also directly involved.
Thanks a lot. And Serge, can I ask you, before I interrupted you with the question, you were also kind of heading to the concerns that you have. Could you share maybe a bit on that? Because you, on the one hand, you talk kind of hopeful in terms of opportunities. We have to embrace this change that is going on. What are the concerns or maybe the hindrances you see for that?
Yeah, first concern is that I see that constituencies, like the support we try to have to push for political change, is really slowing down, or is not really growing in terms of dealing or agreeing on a common ground on for what issues to push for and what actions to do. And less people are or getting politically involved, or also are less willing to fund for international solidarity. So that's really a big challenge. If we do not have a constituency, it's very difficult to be legitimate towards politicians and towards private actors as a change actor. So we really have to work together much more in the future to find each other on these issues that are crucial for the future: democracy, climate change, redistribution of wealth. Otherwise, we will not play a role in this very, very quickly changing world. And indeed, the funding is also a concern, but we'll have to be creative in that. We cannot expect that with governments changing their views, that we'll get everything in the future from governments. We'll have to find new ways to get the funding done.
Thanks a lot, Serge. So if I try to wrap it up, you're saying and I can hear you speak strongly about it, like we are moving from long time ago already from a charity approach to an approach in international cooperation that is based on justice. We're talking about people's rights that are not being met. So it requires a political approach, a system change approach, activist. I also to young people that maybe don't fight for development cooperation, but that do fight against climate change, for example. And the concerns you shared also important. On the one hand, the concerns about public support, constituency, or people in countries such as Belgium or the Netherlands, are they still there in support for international cooperation, for solidarity? And that also, partly relates, but not only to the funding question. And there you call for being creative. Thanks for sharing all this with us. And I would like to invite all of you to share your questions in case you have these for the panelists, for Zunera or for Serge. And also would like to ask you, in case you experience anything in relation to the budget cuts or to the possible decreasing support either in Belgium or in the Netherlands, or maybe you're based elsewhere, please share your experiences in the chat so we can learn from your experiences when it comes to these changes in the world and changes in the world of development cooperation in particular. And I see people are also sharing some concrete tips, for example, about Zambia, where there is an organization that allocates government funds to community-based projects, community-based organizations. So thanks for sharing that. Zunera, before we go to the first statement, I want to ask you if there's anything Serge has been sharing you would like to respond to, or you would like to maybe question Serge about. Feel free.
Yeah, no, I think what Sergi raised are very interesting points, and they cover quite a lot of ground. But I do think that the youth at the moment is engaging, but in a different way. So I think activism has changed quite a lot. It's not just on going on the streets anymore. Now, you have these social media and TikToks and all of these different approaches. So we, for example, can see in Kenya where the whole Gen Z movement started, and that started from social media, and then it went to the street. So I do agree with Sergey that the youth has to be engaged. I do think the youth is engaged, just that they're engaged in manners which is different in terms of generation. And I also think that maybe eventually they will come to the road. I do think so, but I do think that the engagement is better than, I would say, for my generation, which was more in that survival mode. And I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha in that sense are more aware than us. So I feel I'm more positive over there than negative, to be honest.
No, but Zunera, just to reply, I'm very positive also about activism and youth for the moment, because there's a lot of initiatives over there. I'm more a bit worried about the international solidarity, or the sector, or the NGOs, or of being able for the moment to link up with these initiatives and to do it in an equal way. So that's our challenge we have, I think, because
Yeah,
there's
and
indeed we do see a lot of engagement and activism. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think what is important is to change the strategy, to change the way of thinking, also for change the way of engaging with the different actors, um, including youth actors as well. So it just requires reimagining that whole process in that sense. Once again, bringing this term for random reason, but you get the idea. But I do believe that. Yes, right. Like you said, it's more positive. there is hope.
Serge also has a youth actor that is trying to get involved into the debate, which is, of course, very, very good. We applaud that. That's very important, Serge. So,
And what is also amazing is that international news and international reality has never been so present as now. We really international news is really dominating the newspapers, the public debate, much more even than before. So it means like for working on international solidarity of development cooperation, it's a huge opportunity also to link up with what's in the news and what concerns people have.
Thank you so much. And I see some interesting thoughts and also question coming in. I will go to them for now. So I see, sorry, sometimes it's difficult to pronounce people's name properly. And I'm also not quite sure if it's the name of a person or maybe of an organization. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, so it's Getachew, Wonder Fresh Negate, who is writing to us that he or she strongly believes in appropriate education to the younger generation and decolonizing the present system of education to fit the African way of living culture, Ubuntu. So I'm wondering, do you also mean that we change the education culture, for example, here in the Netherlands or in Belgium, or that we change the education in countries in global majority? Maybe you can explain a bit more in the chat on your thoughts, because it sounds very interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing. And then I would like to, before going to the question of Ans, I would like to go to the comment and question of Abdullah, who is saying that he's spotlighting the important role of the diaspora communities and the fact that they sent over $650 billion per year in remittances globally, far exceeding development aid. And he's wondering, can remittances, and I want to give this question to Zunera, can remittances fill the gap of these global budget cuts in development cooperation? So, Zunera, what are your thoughts on that? Can it fill the gap? Do you think it should fill the gap? Would that be a solution to the financial crisis?
Very interesting approach with the remittances. And, in some cases, you also link it to foreign direct investment that, that could come in and fill in the gap. Diaspora communities, I think, play a very major role in helping uplift the communities, the local communities that exist. But at the same time, uh, they can create economic opportunities that can help move the system forward, but they cannot one-on-one replace development cooperation or the money that is lost. So they can play some role, and that also then means putting a burden, shifting the burden from governments to diaspora communities. And that could lead to different kinds of problems and different kinds of pressures on these communities. So while I see value of diaspora to a certain extent, and I do think that they should be more engaged, I think I will raise the point that Sergi made early. I think they can play an important role in creating awareness and solidarity for the development cooperation sector, in addition to obviously helping wherever they can. But counting on them is asking, I think, a bit too much for the diaspora community, specifically because they are trying to make a living here, and then to a certain extent, they're trying to help communities back home. So I'm a bit more skeptical, I have to say. Sergey, I'm also interested in knowing how you see it.
Yeah, I largely agree. Linking up with what I said more on movement making, I think it's important that we try to link up with diaspora communities because there's very few cooperation or collaboration or common understanding with the diaspora communities, for example, in Belgium or Flanders, on how we see international solidarity or development cooperation. And that's where it's getting interesting also, because they have a particular view on how they see their presence over here and the development in their country. And that's a very interesting thing to do. Because a lot of the diaspora communities are organized in Belgium over here. They have they have a lot of organizations. So in terms of movement making and linking up on how they see their contributions, that's really a gap we have to fill. We have to give them more power also in our movements and the decision on what topics to work and how to invest. But I fully agree on this. What is transferred, what is sent, is a huge amount, but is not necessarily going to challenge the system in terms of how we deal with democracy, climate change, etc. Although it can play a role.
So Abdullah, you hear Zunera and Serge, yes, they see the very important role played by diaspora communities, and at the same time, the flashlight that in order to come to system change, maybe more is needed there. I would like to bring up two questions that are related to the role of young people and youth involvement. I think I would like to bring one to Serge that is more like, do you have examples of well, let me see that I do the question that I do right to the question. What are youth living in solidarity with? Is it with specific countries or is it with specific teams? Serge, what are your experiences on that?
What I like a lot is also a way trying to connect younger people in their activism. For example, we're working together with young people involved in Syria in policy work. They try to be an activist in their country, which is a bit more possible than before now, and to link them up with activists over here in Belgium. And it's very confrontating for both of them on what is your reality, what is changing in your society, and how can we collaborate together to make a difference on some issues. And that's really motivating for a lot of young people to have this concrete contact on concrete issues and how they can change and try to elaborate plans and actions in which they believe can have an impact. So this kind of connecting, I think, is very important, and there are a lot of opportunities also on. I think a lot of young people are interested in ideas, alternative ideas that are present in other continents and that are challenging our current approach. Also, I was talking about. I'm very interested in rights of nature. This is really something that has a long history, but is really taking up by a lot of young people, young movements in Ecuador, Latin America. And these movements have already a tradition in how to work with that, deal with it on a local level and international level to try to push for change. And connecting these kind of movements with climate movement over here is really fascinating, because you see that, there's a lot of learning, rethinking, challenging the system. And for me, that's really the way forward. And very few are interested in how the development cooperation should move on in the future. That's not really a debate in which they want to engage.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to both of you. And I see Linda from Wilde Ganzen is also writing, suggesting to Luc, there's an upcoming webinar about global citizenship that might be relevant, where also maybe more questions on youth involvement can be addressed. And I think also for Abdullah, there's also a webinar, Linda, if I'm correct, maybe you can share that as well, a webinar on the role of diaspora, I think later this week. So that might also be very interesting for the people here to attend. Yeah, I see I'm correct there. So thanks a lot, Linda, for sharing that. I think we were talking about, do we have to give people a break? Zunera and I, we are used to teaching, and our students, they can only handle 45 minutes and then we are losing them. And of course, we don't want to lose you. So maybe we can do like very short 4-5 minute break. You go for a cup of coffee or for a beer or wine or a soda or whatever, stretch your legs, and then we reconvene in like, let's say 4-5 minutes. And then we will continue the dialogue with some statements on decolonization, on the role of funding. And then, of course, we will zoom in on the role of fourth pillars and private development initiatives in all of this. So see you in 4 minutes. Good to have you back, Serge and Zunera. I'm not quite sure. I think there's maybe like 1 minute left. I think this is the moment where people in the Netherlands, they need coffee because 8 o'clock, I've learned when I came to live here, 8 o'clock is coffee time in the Netherlands. I think people in Belgium, Serge, they go for beer now or not?
Well, yeah, I just
What?
took some beers. No. Yeah, but 8 o'clock, I think in Belgium, indeed, people would stop drinking coffee because they
Mm.
feel they would not sleep very well. But yeah,
At least
some people
maybe
they
it
have a
changed,
good
but
Belgian beer. But I
what?
understood this morning that for the first time in history in the Netherlands, people buy more InBev, so Belgian beers, than Dutch beers.
That's painful.
Yeah,
That's very painful.
we've
Ay.
reached that moment apparently.
Ay, ay,
At
ay.
home, not in the pubs. In the pubs, it's still Heineken apparently, but at
Okay.
home, private consumption. But that's another topic.
Yeah, we can also do webinar about that, Serge. Okay, I suggest we slowly reconvene. I hope you managed to stretch your legs for a bit so you are rejoining us freshly. I am looking at some of the things that have been shared in the chat while you were going for break. Very important, Abdullahi is including a quote of the very known Joseph Kizerbo. I hope I pronounce his name well, from Burkina Faso. Who wrote on ne développe pas, on se développe, saying that one does not develop others, people develop themselves, which is at the heart of the idea, you could say, of decolonization, development cooperation, of shifting power, of empowering approaches to development cooperation. So thanks for sharing that. If you want to know more about it, I would definitely Google Joseph Kizerbo. You can read a lot about him and the very progressive statement, I would say, that is still today very current. And then Getachew was continuing on the earlier comment on the importance of education and is making a statement in favor of basic vocational trainings compared to more theoretical and sometimes maybe unpractical, time-consuming university education. I think also many fourth pillar organizations are involved in vocational trainings, trying to train people for actual jobs, especially young people. And then there was one, also Barbara is referring to the discussion on, yeah, how do you partner with each other? And is saying we don't want to belittle people or develop people in the global south or the global majority. We really try to work together. And I see Julia, who is warning Serge about the statements about the beer, that there might be a growing disconnect between Serge and the Dutch audience. But
Yeah.
thanks so much,
I
Julia,
will try
for
to make up.
highlighting that. We're going to work on that one.
But I love the Netherlands. I love traveling to the Netherlands. It's a great country.
Yes, that's now you've done a good job, Serge. Thanks a lot. So now we are going to continue in the discussion about decolonization, about the role of funding, and about the role of fourth pillars. We're going to do that with 3 statements, and we will going to take about max 10 minutes for each statement. We're going to show the statement first to you. You will see the statement on your screen. If all goes well, you can click. So you will be asked to agree or disagree with the statement. There's no room for gray area in this sense. If it doesn't work on your screen, you can also use the chat. You can also use the chat to share additional thoughts. So please feel free to do that. If all goes well, the first statement on decolonization will appear on your screen now. And then, so the statement sounds: shifting more power and decision making to local actors, local organizations, goes too slow. You can either agree or disagree. So I hope you managed to, let's say, vote or to share your thoughts on that one. And Tina is already... Oh, Tina is not seeing the statement. I hope Tina is the only one, but thanks a lot, Tina, for sharing. And Tina is agreeing with the fact that, yes, it goes too slow, shifting power, decolonization. I think we can close the vote, but Ernst-Jan, maybe you can see how many people, maybe people are still answering. I can't see that, but if you feel... So we see 83% of you is agreeing with that and 17% is disagreeing. Thanks a lot for joining us. I don't think I was expecting this outcome. So I will first turn to Zunera to share her thoughts on this one and to dig into a bit deeper about that process of shifting power decision, local decision making. And maybe you can also share a bit about what you learned through the study that we did on the reimagining and the improving. Zunera, the floor is yours for a first response
Thank
to
you,
this
Sarah.
statement.
Yeah, very interesting. But majority of the people agree that it is going slower. Um, and here again comes the same fact that we originally talked about, that it's easier said than done. The shifting of power and shifting of decision making. What we saw in one of the studies that we conducted earlier was that when we interviewed NGOs and community-based organizations, most of them thought that shifting power is a problem, but it's not a problem for their organization or for themselves, because they thought that they, as partners, worked very on a same level. But interestingly, when we asked their partners in the global south, they did not see that the partnerships were equal. So what we found was very interesting, that the self-reflection in many organizations were a little bit missing in terms of this movement. And we also see that if we look at this differentiation that we created between reimaginers and improvers, over there as well, the reimaginers were agreeing with this statement as well most of the time, and they were saying the same thing, that um, that there is a drastic need to change the system, because the current system altogether supports structure that makes it very difficult to shift the power. Even if you as one organization want to do that, it becomes more and more difficult because the system is designed in such a way.
But what can you make it more concrete, Sunera? Like, what are elements in that system that make it so difficult? If all of us want this, why isn't not happening?
There are different aspects to it. I think the first one is obviously funding. The funding flows in one direction. It's going from global north and going towards global south. So, and where funding comes, that's where agenda setting is happening. We also saw that there is problem with decision making. Who is deciding what the project will be about, and how the project will go about? On paper, this decision making could be shared in principle, but in reality, usually the decision is done from one side and transferred from north to south in most cases. We also see, in terms of structural systems that are in place, the reporting that is there, reporting on how the project was done, how accountability took place, it's only one way. That means that if the donor says that we can't give you money anymore, or, we have to step out, like many US aid projects now, they stepped out, there is no accountability. Nobody at any point is holding the donor accountable, or the organizations that are giving money, that they will step away at some point, and they can do that without any question. So you see, on a structural level, the system is built in such a way that some hold more power than the other, and in that system, bringing about an actual change becomes more and more difficult.
And I have a question from Trini is asking to the research you're referring to, is it about a specific country, or is this something taking place in more countries?
So the one that I specifically was talking about was the research that I was involved in with the team at Radboud University. We had quite some Dutch organizations, Dutch NGOs that were participating in that, and from the global south, their partners from Sudan. We had Congo and some countries in Asia, but for example, Indonesia and stuff like that. So they decided on which partners we could interview, but we interviewed all of these partners together and separately, and the results were quite interesting there.
Thanks a lot, Zunera. And I think we put in the chat, there's an article, a link to an article shared with you, which is explaining why it is so difficult, what are important barriers when it comes to shifting power. It's an academic publication. Some people find that frightening in itself, but I know it is a very accessible paper based on a very interesting study that might give you a bit more insight in this discussion. So, Serge, when listening to Zunera, you could say, and also to what some people wrote in the chat, you could say, is it still the one that pays decides? And some people are also saying shifting power, decolonization has been colonized by actors in the global north. What are your thoughts on that, and what are your experiences there from Triple 11?
Yeah, money is for sure a very important factor in it. But at the end, it all starts a bit from our way of thinking we have, both here in the global north, but also in the global south. I mean, if we have exchanges with partners on decolonization, colonization, also partners of the global south, they come up with a kind of narrative which is a lot of times still framed in a classical donor receiver relation, because, and that's normal for them, a lot of things depend also on that debate. I mean, taking more power also means sometimes taking more risks, taking more responsibility, being involved more in debates on what is going to be the strategy for the future, etc. So it is exciting for both global northern organizations and global south organizations. But if you don't have that higher debate, it's very difficult to define concretely how you're going to deal with the money, because it it starts with that question: do you want to share power? Do we want to share power? If you agree on that, then you share the power and the money also. It's a logical consequence of that. But that first debate is a difficult one to have. You really have to go through it, and it's painful sometimes also, because how people talk about you've related in the past and things that you've done in the past and how they could have been different is not easy to to listen to or to understand sometimes. And it's also on other things, like in the chat also was mentioned a bit above, I think, linked to decolonization, the concept of Ubuntu. It's not only about the money, it's also about how you relate with each other, how you debate with each other. What is your democratic or participatory idea? And Ubuntu is really a different way of relating to each other, which is much more culturally logic in some African context than it is in our European context. But are we open to listen and to adapt to another way of debate, to another way of dealing with meetings, planning, which traditionally we like to control a lot from the global north? So it's also about being open for deep democracy, Ubuntu, other ways which are not always global northern ways to relate with each other. So it's going slowly here and there. I see some things moving on, and which does not help, I think, for the moment, is also that the whole debate on decolonization has really shifted the last years. Like, it was, in my eyes, 4 or 5 years ago, a much more constructive debate in society, while now it's very polarized, and even there's less debate on decolonization, I think. So that doesn't help. But I'm a strong believer that we really should continue to explore these, how to come to equal partnership, how to understand each other in how we see a system, and how it has to be sustainable, and how we can work on that. And if you don't have that debate, it's very difficult to come to practical things, because from only practical things is more like it's a very technical understanding, but not really a common understanding of how you see change.
Okay, thanks a lot, Serge. So, Zunera, how would you like to respond to this one?
Just very quickly, I think specifically in the global north, I think people do not understand colonization. I've had many discussions and debates, and people see colonization, the thing that happened in the past, as something bad, and it was more about taking resources and something like that. But colonization was much deeper than that. It was basically change of a mindset altogether. It was this understanding that you are worse and we are better, and it was generational. So it was not only that my parents or grandparents experienced it, it is passed on to me as well, as someone belonging from that part of the world, even if I did not experience this firsthand. So when we grow up, we learn English first and then we learn our own language, simply because we still strongly believe that um, the people who colonized us were better, and we want to be like them. And if we come from that mindset, you also have to understand that by just saying to your partners that um now go, you have power, tell us what you want, they will never respond to it, because it's just bigger than just say, hey, we had power, now we give it to you. And this is something that I think many people in, or many organization as well in the global not do not understand, that it's bigger than just saying, hey, let's share power and that's it. So just, I just wanted to highlight this small point that I personally experience quite a lot.
Thanks a lot, Sunera. So you're also saying like it's so deeply ingrained in, you could almost say in your in DNA of people in Global North, people in Global South, all playing, having played our role in colonial times, although we were maybe not even present, but it kind of shaped how we look at each other and how we relate to each other, so that it is easier said than done. So maybe I see, yeah, that yeah, you're being thanked for this explanation in the chat. Thanks a lot, Zunera. So yeah, that can be maybe one of the important hindrances, that it is easier said than done. And I see Abdullah is also mentioning shift the power to women. He's saying, because when you empower a woman, you empower a family and a community. When you give a man $1, he will spend it. Thanks a lot also, Abdullah, for sharing that gendered perspective. And then I would like to invite people that are still with us to maybe share in the chat also if you feel the partnership, maybe you're in multiple partnerships, but if you feel your partnership is equal, and if you feel like what are the things you're trying to do to maybe shift power in case that is something you're working on. I would like, in the meantime, move on to the second statement, and that will bring us to the topic of money. We have already a bit touching upon it, but maybe the second statement reads, we can do more in development cooperation with less funding. So we're all talking about the budget cuts. We primarily look at the budget cuts at a big problem, a financial crisis, and we are presenting the statement, or it's a statement, so we can do more in development cooperation with less funding. Love to hear your thoughts on that, either by voting and or by sharing your thoughts on that one in the chat. We give you some time for that. So, and then Abdullah is also, thanks a lot for sharing that, is referring to Aimé Césaire. I must admit, I'm so sorry, Abdullah, but I'm not familiar with this author. I'm so sorry. So you're referring to the work of Aimé Césaire. I'm going to look it up immediately. If you want to understand colonization, we have to read the work of Aimé Césaire. So thanks a lot. And Con is bringing up, referring to Ubuntu, as brought up by Serge and also by another member of the webinar here, that and explaining from the experience in South Africa how the concept of Ubuntu is indeed helping them a lot in the partnerships they're having with people and organizations in South Africa. Okay, I hope you managed to vote. Maybe, Ernst-Jan, you can share the outcomes of these statements. So is it all about the money, and can we do with less funding? Ooh, that's more like a close call. So a bit over half of the people here are saying, yes, we can do more in development cooperation with less funding. Very interesting. And of course, there's also like 48% of you that is disagreeing with it. So Serge, maybe you can share your thoughts before going to Zunera. What are your thoughts on are we too much focused on money? Yeah, is this financial crisis maybe also a way to learn again on how to do more with less and how to, I don't know, organize ourselves better, stop doing certain things?
I certainly think that there's a risk of being too much focused on money. And sometimes we are too much focused on money in the sense that, like, being in that system of being able to get money from local community, from donors, international, it takes a lot of energy and time and to get things done, which sometimes even do not link up automatically with what we really want to do. And I come back to the remark on somebody mentioned also in the chat on Ubuntu. I have it sometimes that donors refuse a new concept in a program to work with partners in an equal way and to share power based on Ubuntu, discussed with our partners. But for donors, that's too risky, that's too alternative. But then it's not okay. I mean, then we are focusing too much to get the money, to get these things, to not do this kind of innovative things, new ways forward, because we focus on donors and which traditionally sometimes have a more conservative agenda. Yeah, we really have to try to get to new initiatives, innovating dynamics. And a risk of being too much focused on the money is also that we could forget that finally money comes when you are, let's say, popular. I mean, the more constituency you have, the more people that support your thoughts, your way forwards, that believe in what you're doing, that's the best guarantee to get the money in the future. So we really have to focus on, are our solutions that are understandable, communicable to the broad public, and do we really come up with things that are competitive in this very quick changing world? And I believe that when we are a relevant actor in that quick changing society, we will have a lot of opportunities to get the funding right also. So yes and no, I do agree that's very important. You cannot just drop everything, but just focusing on the money will make that at a certain time you will disconnect from reality also and lose opportunities.
So you would say money follows good ideas, in a very simplified way. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a way.
Okay. Thank you. And Mark, I see your question in the chat. Could you maybe explain it a bit further in the chat so that I can bring up your question, because I think it's very relevant, but I don't completely understand it yet. So wat wordt er door beleidsmakers aangehaald? Maybe you can elaborate a bit so then we can come to your question. Thanks a lot, Sergio, for sharing your thoughts on the role of money. Zunera, what do you think about the discussion about the role of funding? Do we overvalue money?
I do think we can do more with less money for the simple reason that the current structures are kind of self-fulfilling. Most of the organizations that are there, they are not there with the purpose of making a difference and leaving. We are there to stay as an organization, and we operate with the assumption that we are there to stay, and our functionalities are also built around that. There are obviously, because there is practical reason behind that as well, because the problem is not solved. But at the same time, if you look at the working of most organizations, it is based on that structure that we need to expand. We will go now operate in this country and that country, will make more country offices and everything. So I think the structure altogether is very, very inefficient and has become an industry of its own. And in becoming that industry, we do use money inefficiently. So I was trying to look up some figures, and the best known multilateral organization at the moment is World Food Program. They pride themselves in being most efficient. And if you look at their overhead costs, the only 60% of it actually reaches the ground, and 40% of it is either operations, or it is a combination of management costs, travel, and so on and so forth. So that is huge. 60/40 is a huge difference to be wasted in the industrial complex that development sector has become altogether. So I do see that if we actually go to the communities and try to come up with the restructured system in which the focus is not expanding and staying longer, but it's more on getting out, making a difference in getting out, maybe we will be able to do with limited money as well.
So you see opportunities to organize ourselves differently. And Mark is bringing up like, yeah, when we talk about efficiency of the system, we do that when we talk about development cooperation, but we don't do that when we talk about defense. Nobody's questioned the efficiency of our defense ministry or our apparatus. So is that something you recognize?
It's very hard. So, I mean, altogether, defense spending increasing with education budgets decreasing, and development budget decreasing is something I strongly stand against. So I completely agree with you in that, Mark, that we can definitely look into defense spending and making that more efficient and bringing money to where it can actually help people for sure.
So a reallocation process is taking place here between Zunera and Mark can be leading that process. I can see that happening. Thanks a lot. We have 10 minutes left, and we started the discussion the broad developments going on in the world and in development cooperation. Then we have doing some soul searching on more like in general when it comes to decolonization and the role of funding. Let's now end the discussion by zooming in on the role of private development initiatives, fourth pillar organizations. Most of the people here in the webinar are being involved in a small citizen-led development organization. We have a final statement to zoom in on the role of these particular actors in everything that's going on in the world. So maybe you can share that final statement. So the fourth pillar organizations or private development initiatives should increase their involvement in the public debate. So the public debate in the Netherlands or in Belgium on development cooperation, on inequality or on injustice, you should be more involved in that public debate beyond your own interest, beyond a fundraising agenda. Very interested to hear your thoughts on that. Again, also here, maybe in the chat. And at the same time, I'm looking at the comment of Con, who is saying, I agree with Zunera that organizations are to stay and cost a lot. Okay, and it's reflecting on the experience that they have in South Africa, where it's really people-to-people collaborations. You can stay in even when you step out of funding because relationships are there to stay. Thanks a lot, Con, for highlighting that. That also maybe brings us a bit to the core of many citizen initiatives, where it's really people-to-people and where relationships are often at the core. Zunera?
Ans actually posted a question for you, Sarah, earlier, asking your opinion on this, given your knowledge. Do you want to share some of your ideas?
Yeah, I saw that one. Thank you. I think it was when we were talking about money. I think when I look at the system of development cooperation, that it is very, very strongly centered around money. And with money comes distrust. And I do this very briefly, but because when money is involved, we want to control, we want to make sure that we do the best things with money, we want to get reports, we want proper accountability. So a lot of it is centered around it. We have call for proposals, we have complex monitoring and evaluation systems. And I think that risks to kill the human factor in development cooperation. And I strongly believe in the importance of the human factor. So I see, of course, the role of money. And of course, I would be very naive if I would say that we can do without money. But I do believe we can give a less prominent role to money. And I think that would be very, very helpful and bring us more. Also, Zunera, you were also talking about, in the end of the day, it is about what kind of change do we would like to contribute to? What is the change we envision? And we come up with a system that is there to be supportive to reach that aim, instead of a system that is supportive in order to keep organizations going, in order to keep money flows going. And I feel somehow we ended up in a system that is more about the system itself instead of the goals. And now I'm talking in general, I'm not talking about private initiatives in particular or fourth pillars but the system as a whole. I feel, yeah, that's a lot about money. Ernst Jan, maybe you can share the outcomes of this poll. Okay, I like this. I must say I was not expecting this. So 95% of you is saying yes, fourth pillar organizations or private development initiatives should increase their involvement in the public debate. That's I find it very hopeful. But maybe I can ask Serge to also respond on that, and also maybe share you've been talking in the beginning, you were saying like that one of your concerns is public support being under pressure. Less obvious maybe for people to be supportive to development cooperation. You were talking about the importance of being political, about being activist in order to come to system change. How do you see the role of four pillars in all of this?
Yeah, also, this is a very helpful result. It's very nice to see this because engagement is needed from many parts of society. And I don't see that only citizens have to engage, NGOs have to engage, civil society organizations have to engage. I also do believe that fourth pillar has that role to play now, because if you see, we all see that things that we believe are very important as the institutions we have who work on justice issues. If we don't step in now, it will happen. I mean, things will disappear. And things that we believe very evident as human rights, as democracy, as international solidarity in a way, they will disappear. There's a lot of powers for the moment that are already there and only gaining more power and are working against all these things that we want to defend. So, yeah, it is important. Strength in numbers, I would call it. It's not because fourth pillar organizations or private initiatives are smaller than NGOs or whatever. Every voice, every initiative that supports defending also these core values is very important. So it's really hopeful for me that those who are present here, they want to engage, because it will be necessary, I think.
Thank you. I like it a lot how you say we need everyone to defend core values that are being at stake. So you're not talking about defending money or budgets. So going on the street for fundraising. No, you're saying we have to go out to defend core values that are at stake, that are under pressure, and we need everyone on board. So that's a clear invitation also to the fourth pillar organizations, private initiatives that are here. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Sarah, may I ask how you feel about it? Because you've been in this research for quite some time with citizen initiatives and all.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I strongly agree with the call of Serge. But when I look at my research, and we have been doing quite a lot of research in the past years, also both in Belgium and in the Netherlands and in some surrounding countries on the role of citizen initiatives. And what we've seen is that overall in Belgium, citizen initiatives are more engaged in the public debate in their own backyard, so to say. They undertake more initiatives or more events, more debates. They go to schools more often compared to Dutch organizations. And when I look at Flanders, we see that with the budget cuts of the Flemish government, there's a lot at stake for private initiatives. There's a risk that they will lose funding. And for me, I'm very much concerned about it. Yes, for the impact that fourth pillars can make in the global south, there's pressure on that, but also because I see that there is a risk that fourth pillars, if they're not in the position to play their public role, yeah, I think that is a true risk for engagement of ordinary people, for example, in Belgium, to be informed, to be engaged in development cooperation. In the Netherlands, in the past years, with exception from Wilde Ganzen and a few other organizations, there was not a lot of support, institutional support for private initiatives. There was not a lot of encouragement or financial support to work on public engagement, and that is changing now. So in that sense, for the Netherlands, I'm hopeful that private initiatives will be more encouraged to play that role in public debate. And in Belgium, I hope that fourth pillar organizations stay strong, and that provinces and municipalities stay committed to providing support to fourth pillar organizations to both make impact in the global south, but at the same time to play their part in the public debate in Belgium. So I don't know if that was a clear response. So there's concern and there's hope at the same time. And there's especially the call and the strong plea, similar to what Serge was saying, like, I hope you are willing and find the courage and the time to also play your part here in the in the global north, be it in Belgium, be it in the Netherlands, be it elsewhere. We need you as key actors in the public debate. And I'm seeing Veerle is saying, so based on the outcome of the question, we should be on the streets on March 12th. See you in Brussels. I must say, I don't know which protest it is, Serge. Can you help me here?
Solidarity March in
Solidarity
Brussels.
March. Okay.
There's a lot of civil society actors will be there to ask for solidarity, also in Belgium, but also for international solidarity. 11 is participating, so Veerle, what a good idea. Let's make it concrete. Go to the march, take a flag, whatever, and that's what we have to do, I think.
Thanks a lot, Veerle. I think we can end this webinar on this note. We all go to Brussels, and after that we eat a very good Brussels waffle or whatever of good food that you have to offer us. But before we go there, we have to go on the streets. It is 8:31, so we're coming to the end of this webinar. We want to thank all of you for your participation, for sharing your questions. We did our best to respond to your questions and your comments. I hope you have got some kind of inspiration for your own soul searching on the role you want to play when it comes to shifting power and decolonization, on the role you want to play when it comes to public engagement in the Netherlands or in Belgium. Of course, there is a short survey. I should not forget to say that. Remember the questionnaire, it is said in the chat. It's very important for Wilde Ganzen and het vierde Pijlersteunpunt to learn from your experiences about this webinar so that they can improve for the next year. I saw already someone saying we should have someone, a partner from the Global South as part of the webinar. So I think that feedback will already be taken along for next year. So thanks a lot for your participation. Thanks a lot, Wilde Ganzen en Vierde Pijlersteunpunt. Thanks a lot, Serge and Zunera, for joining us here tonight, and wishing you all a very, very good evening and a lot of hope, inspiration, and encouragement to continue your work here close to home and far away.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Also.
And thank you, Sarah, as well.